Hello everyone, I'm David. I'm working at Leo as an Ember developer. And today I will talk about briefly about keynote presentation and from EmberConf and a little bit about what Dan presented about data. So, first thing, there is a guy which probably some of you already know, Yehuda, which decided to do something crazy, and he created a Quest issue on GitHub, which is referenced here. Basically, the idea is to get rid of the jQuery dependency from the core of the Ember.js. It takes like, I don't know, 20% of the build size, and due to the fact that we have already query selector implemented, we don't need this anymore probably. So this Quest idea works pretty well because a lot of people decide to contribute and create a lot of pull requests, and in quite short amount of time, like 2 months, they progress very nicely with that. I would say, I don't know, 80–90% of things are already migrated to have jQuery out of the Ember. Of course, it's a longer, it's the thing that will take longer time because a lot of add-ons, unfortunately, keep using jQuery. So it will take time, but at least Ember, or in Ember, it will be optional quite soon. I would say 2–3 versions maybe, hopefully, we'll see. So the build size will be like 20–30% lower with the fresh Ember app. Already Michael mentioned about new file layout in the Ember. I will just focus on 2 cool things that will be there because it's pretty big subject. But one of the coolest thing is the local lookup in the application. Basically how it works, we will able to get rid of very nested paths for the components. So basically, resolver at the beginning will take a look at it will take a look in scope of the current parent component, I would say, for a corresponding component. So here you can see the category line component, and you don't have to provide the whole path to this component because of this local lookup in the application. The similar situation you can see with, I see a bug here because there is category item, there should be a category line, sorry. The similar situation is with the category list. Basically, yeah, this is this change of how resolver works, and thanks to that we don't have to write the full absolute path to the component anymore. But it requires, unfortunately or fortunately, a new file layout in our apps. But at the bottom you can see code mod, or sort of a migration tool, which helps you to migrate to the new file layout. Another cool thing dedicated for add-on creators is the similar feature, but it's more like namespace-like feature, where you will able to determine that your component actually comes from add-on, not from your app. So it will be pretty nice to be able to see in the application that you are using something that comes from external code base, I would say. As I mentioned, this change is pretty huge. So you can take a look at RFC 143, where you can see the full description of how everything there will work and how the change will, how big the change will be. in short, it will be similar a little bit to pod structure that was available in the past, but with some changes. The idea is to have everything in terms of more like business in same place, but it's brighter or it's wider subject. So take a look at this RFC. Here I will briefly just mention about some simplifications in tests. Basically, till now we had to, or quite often, we had to use and then helper, and sometimes because of that, because of things like we would like to test that we, for instance, click on the button and something will happen, but we wasn't sure that it will happen instantly or it's some async action. So we had to use and then, which forced us to have a nested code in specs. The whole idea is to avoid this nested code. So because of that, native DOM helpers under the hood use query selectors, and also they already returns the promises. So we can await our code and have a more synchronous-like code, which is more readable, definitely easier to write. Yeah, and we don't have to worry about some very strange-looking code anymore, especially if it's very nested. So, as I mentioned, we don't need to use and then anymore. When we can, for instance, use helper, which returns the promise, and we can just await and then use assertion. There's pretty big, I would say, pressure on the creators of Ember, not because React already has that features, but also we want some simplification, some improvements as well. So there will be greater use of S5, S6 in Ember and mostly in Glimmer, in fact, also TypeScript. So on the left you can see that, for instance, getters from S5 will be available, which is good. We wait a long time for that. We will able to forget about get on Ember objects, theoretically with some exceptions. And the similar situation will be with set, but that's the other story. Also, we will have classes, which is quite good, finally. And more about that and more examples, what will be available, you can see at the bottom on this article. It's pretty detailed, so if you like to take a look at this and find out what will be possible, just check it out. One of the cool features that were already on the previous slide was decorators, which are sort of a, I would say, class-related helpers. I mean, class-related with Ember in our case. So now we have dedicated decorators. So for instance, we don't have to write explicitly inject name of the service, inject service. But for instance, we can use decorator for that. Also for other common used stuff in components, we have all the list of already useful decorators. So we don't have to remember about them. We just go to Ember Decorators, and for instance, component, and we get the full list. It's also decoupled from the core a little, which is always good. Here are the reference to docs about decorators if you want to take a look at this and find out in details how it works, what options we already have. But basically it will clean up our code quite a bit. Another cool thing, I would say, and that comes from ES5, unfortunately, is finally we can use native setters, but that wouldn't be a cool feature, I would say, if we would just have it, because the whole idea of Ember object is to have observable like solution for our properties in the class. So basically, here we can see on the left side that we have classical ES6 class service that is the decorator, and title use classic set method approach that was available before in the past, which all, of course, notify every computed property that was looking at the title, which was pretty useful because once we, for instance, use a slack in our template, it was, even if we called update title, it was automatically notified and it was updated on the template. Okay, that's good. But now it's even simpler because if we use, if we take a look at the right side, here we see the native set method. Under the hood, it's not fully native, but that's the other story. And in fact, just by adding tracked title decorator usage, we will able to get rid of passing the list of all properties that our computed property should be triggered by. So for instance, you can see at the bottom, computer doesn't have to know that title is dependent property to the slack. It will be automatically notified even if we will use native setters syntax. Of course, if we use the tracked title. So every property which have anything to do with title will be notified. So of course, if we will have nested properties, nested computed properties even, we won't have to remember anymore about passing the keys of dependent properties, with some exceptions, but this is just the first approach, first stage, I would say. With nested properties, it shouldn't work as great yet, especially if there will be some enumerables. Okay, that's the change that comes to Glimmer. So we get rid of curly braces in favor of more React-like approach. It works in React, so Ember core team decided to just adapt that to our tool. So basically there will be uppercase with the component name, and it will be more like HTML-like syntax. So templates should look more tidy, I would say. Another thing, it's add-on already, so it's not like anything totally in core, but In fact, it was in the past. And now we have dedicated tool for optional or experimental features in Ember. So now all you have to do you will have to write simple comment, and you will get the list of all optional features that are available for your version of Ember, which you can very easily turn on, turn off. And the idea behind that is also to be able to push things forward a little bit faster, because there are some ideas in Ember and they want to be open for more experiments, and that will be the way how they will do it. And at the bottom, of course, you can see the URL to the add-on repo connected with that. Of course, it will work in apps only, and that's the initial idea for now. They mentioned that probably add-ons won't have it, but this is for now. Experiments. So, on EmberConf, there was pretty cool demo at the end, where Yakuda said something like, I spent last weeks or months in garage, or sort of, or he was hidden basically, because he's pretty hyped with Rust. But the idea was, besides that, was to try to speed up LinkedIn a little. And they did a small experiment. They rewrite the feed of the LinkedIn application in pure Glimmer. And for a comparison, they took Preact just for looking at the performance. The result of this was, of course, Preact won in the first round, I would say. Also, they create a small app which already used the new layout structure and poor Glimmer, which is a side effect of this experiment. But Yahuda, hyped Yahuda approach was to get deeper with Rust, and he decided to do some sample implementation of Glimmer in Rust, which will be then compiled to WebAssembly. And then in the second round, there was a slightly difference in results of this LinkedIn rewrite, LinkedIn feed, in fact. And WebAssembly version of Glimmer was like 0.5 seconds faster, more or less, than Preact version. What it tells us, basically, that might be the way to go if we want to have a better performance. And it's cool that we can already do some experiments with that. But they didn't mention anything that we will rewrite Glimmer from scratch and everyone will go to Rust. No, or not yet. We will see. Also, they create a similar application to what you can see at the top, but in WebAssembly. So it's a little bit faster. You can check this out on your mobile phone. Yeah, it works pretty well. Also, if you like to see how this Glimmer implementation, Rust implementation looks like with Glimmer, here's the corresponding pull requests, where you can just check this out. Okay, what about data? This will be more general, I would say, look about the future of data. No specific details yet, But in fact, Ember core team with Dan, which is responsible with JSON API mainly, realized that market has new or wider requirements than in the past. So basically, apps that we are creating connecting to multiple data sources. Also, for sake of PWA, we need to take a look at offline modes with service workers. Yeah, as I mentioned, our apps needs to connect more and more data sources. So there are now just JSON API, there are GraphQL, WebSockets, and others. Also, developers quite often ask for more flexibility with Ember data. So, for instance, that calls creation of custom actions by Maciej or other solutions that are a little bit in parallel to Ember data, but core team decide to have more standardized answer for that concern. Also, core team realized one important fact, that to grow the solution should be framework agnostic. And here you can see the orbit, which is not in fact just data layer, but it gives extra layer between your backend and data layer in the mobile, in the client app. And for instance, take care of offline modes, multiple context, data conflicts related with offline mode, stuff like that. And Orbit is not Ember dedicated solution. It's more like general purpose solution that can be connected with React, Vue, or Angular. Also, there are pretty visible trends related to how to handle data, and seems that GraphQL gets some attention, gets some traction. So probably in next years it will get a bigger piece of the cake. Similar with Apollo, maybe because it's a little bit framework agnostic. And already there is already draft of JSON API 1.1, but similar, like there was a problem with optional features in Ember, JSON API core team decided to create something like extensions, and here's the sample of the extension that may came up soon, which is called operations, which will be similar to what custom actions in Ember should do. So we will able to get a little bit outside of JSON API, but still that will be optional feature. So we won't break anything theoretically if we will follow the extensions. And all extensions also should have specification on the main JSON API website. So theoretically, it shouldn't be like that, that someone do some freestyle. But I already saw that theoretically you can reference anything there. So probably it's possible, unfortunately. And basically that's it from what I had to say. Here you can see the repo where everything from EmberConf was wrapped by the community. There are some small and pretty brief explanations, descriptions of every presentations. There are slides, videos, and everything what was there. And basically that's it. Thank you.